In a previous video, I shared how I came into considering a tuna in spite of having a really tiny wrist, how I went from looking at the smallest tuna there is to eventually settling for a far larger one, and perhaps an implication that trying on a Seiko Tuna is the only way to know how these watches would practically wear. I kept that more of an initial impressions video rather than a more technical review to allow myself the time to get to know the watch better. Possibly let the honeymoon phase come to an end so that I may come up with better recommendations and most importantly, put it in rotation with my other watches, which are all ladies sized by some standards by the way, cause the idea of 47mm Seiko Tuna taking the place of a 35mm Tissot PRX as an all-around daily was an idea I wasn't then so sure of and one that I still find hard to believe even after a month of actually happening. So much so that I think a closer inspection of this watch's dimensions would make for a more interesting review than a typical look into its technical specifications. There are far better resources for that, but just because I said in the previous video that I'd be going through those, then yeah, I'll briefly go through them anyway. Stainless steel case with a polycarbonate shroud, screw-on steel case back and screw-down crown for 200 meters of water resistance, 120 click unidirectional bezel that's light and ratchety, perfect alignment on this copy, really supple and comfortable silicone rubber strap, solar movement with 10 months of power reserve, and a really crazy bicolored lume application. I told you it was gonna be quick. Well, this watch looks different now as you can see, so I guess I'll go briefly over those modifications as well. Stainless steel shroud is one of those $20 Chinese knockoffs that can be found on AliExpress, eBay, Lazada, etc. And bracelet is a fully brushed straight end mill from Strapcode, which I got for $65 from Amazon. The stainless steel shroud fits perfectly and has identical dimensions to that of the plastic one that came out of the box. It does add a noticeable weight to the head of the watch though. Fully brushed all around except for the top facets on those cutouts, which were originally high polished. Brushing is actually good but the polishing was not, so I brushed them off with the sanding sponge for about 5 minutes and I think I did a really good job. Nasty sharp edges on literally every edge that was hidden. Successfully smoothed those out as well with the Corsair sponge. I was actually hesitant about getting the shroud thinking the finishing would be disappointing, and it did disappoint, but one I'd purchase again to finish myself instead of getting a $100 equivalent from Yoboki's, which in my opinion is a bit too much for a watch that sells for around $250. Now on with the stainless steel bracelet. Solid links held together by screws, solid straight ends, fully milled hinge scissors, pressed flip-lock clasp with push-button mechanism, and 3 positions for micro-adjust. Finishing is flawless. All brushed top surfaces and high polished sides on all of the links and on the clasp. I'd say this is excellent value for the price I paid. The only slight gripe I have for it would be the clasp being a bit too long for me. Sized up for my 6-inch wrist, those scissors get in the way of the closest link, limiting its articulation and consequently its ability to conform to the shape of the wrist better. Not an issue I'm sure for those with bigger wrists who will need to take off fewer links than I had to. The stock Seiko strap is really comfortable and I love it, but too sad it was too long. The excess tail I got was just something I couldn't ignore. NATO's worked really well with the watch and in fact is my favorite looking combination until the steel shroud made it noticeably top heavy. Despite adding even more weight, the steel bracelet effectively balanced with the head of the watch, making it feel lighter on the wrist in actual use. With those out of the way, let's take a closer look at the case dimensions. Cause how could somebody who can't even wear a 40mm PRX nor a 43mm G-Shock square suddenly find a 47mm diver so perfect in this regard? I actually had to take my time with the calipers more seriously for this review, trying to answer that question. I'll be needing my son's watch to illustrate my point, taking measurements from the dial or the LCD in case of the G-Shock, moving all the way to the widest parts of each watch. That's 32mm on the G-Shock and just a hair under 30 on the Tuna. Slightly extending the calipers to the outer perimeter of each bezel, the Tuna again proves to be the smaller watch. Further moving out, the G-Shock registers practically 45mm at the widest part of the case, and the Tuna closer to 47 because of that shroud. But it is worth noting that the shroud slopes in narrower to the top, measuring exactly 45 across next to the bezel. That, together with an almost equal lug-to-lug distance, makes the Tuna present itself more like a 45mm watch on the wrist. The G-Shock, on the other hand, extends to almost 49mm to the very north and south ends of the case, with the integrated strap design adding around 2mm of length to each side. Here are both watches on a 6-inch wrist. I'm not sure if you'll all agree, but I personally feel that the G-Shock wears bigger because of the perceivably longer lug-to-lug distance. Viewing these watches from the side is where those differences become apparent. That gap between the G-Shock and my wrist explains why I'm so close to getting a baby G instead. Let's get these watches off the wrist again for a detailed look. Look at how those lugs in the Tuna shoot downward, bringing the spring bars below the level of the case back. That, combined with the fully articulating end link on the bracelet, brings it closer to the wrist, making it look way thinner than its 1mm advantage over the G-Shock actually suggests. Let me try to wrap this all up. This watch is a capable 40mm diver encased in a 47mm shroud that's perceivably closer to 45, with a lug measurement that's more common for watches that come at around 39. So I'd say if you have the guts or at least the taste for style of a big man trapped in a skinny frame like mine, don't let the pretentious shroud on any of these Tunas intimidate you at all. These watches are small watches trapped in big cases anyway. Hope you found the video entertaining and helpful. Hope to see you in the next.